Victoria Nuland or Hillary Clinton, who are all professors at Columbia, and the body count that comes with them is welcomed there by Columbia leadership. The views of anti-genocide students, completely forbidden.
And the whole purpose of the First Amendment, is to keep the government out of the business of evaluating the content of speech. And that's what she's doing. And she's got an armed force who arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning looking like they were Marines about to storm a hill. An armed force to enforce her opinions of the content of the student's speech. What did you witness? We'll go to the other side of the United States. I know you've been covering this at UCLA.
Yeah. Well, I want to contrast what's happening at UCLA first with what happened at Columbia, because it was unusual to me that the students broke into Hamilton Hall, which was when they were holding the lawn, and this was going to prevent graduation from taking place as planned. They were in a very strong negotiating position, and they gave up their negotiating position 12 hours after the NYPD, after Columbia leadership said they were going to lock down campus. Now there's no encampment left. They gave the NYPD all it needed to justify this raid. So I think we're going to need an analysis, a morning after analysis of what actually happened there and whether they were led into a security state trap. At UCLA, what you saw was students actually holding their ground, not giving up their encampment. They're in Westwood, in West LA. So they're basically geographically between the very Likudnik, very violent Israeli expat community, which goes all the way out to Ventura County in West LA, and the neocon, pro-regime change Iranian community right there in Westwood. And they were assaulted brutally starting 4 nights ago. The Zionists, with institutional Zionist support, including from the Anti-Defamation League, which claims to oppose hate, they were blasting sounds to sonically terrorize these students with the sounds of babies in distress, very irritating music. And then they started being hit with Dodger Stadium level fireworks, which injured and wounded many students. Then these mobs set in on the students. And this was just about 24 hours after Zionist counter-protesters had been wishing that these students be raped, killed, were waving bananas at them to call for the death of one who said they had a banana allergy. They brutally beat these students with pipes, with metal pipes, with hammers, with rocks. There were young people coordinating pepper spraying of protesters. And I've spoken to some people who were present on the protesters' side who said that the students did not want to play into the narrative of themselves being violent, so they were afraid to even fight back. And you can just look at the video. It's all very clear there. You're seeing criminal assault in broad daylight by pro-Israel elements who were egged on not only by Donald Trump, who said it's time to clear these protests out, but by Joe Biden, who condemned these students as anti-Semitic for simply using an Arabic word for rebellion or shaking off, intifada. And so basically, our 2 most visible political leaders set the stage for ethno-supremacist mob violence. And outside of LA, the media is not really treating this as some gigantic scandal. The New York Times referred to it as clashes. Oh, they're just clashing at the White House press briefing today.
Where were the LA police
Great
when
question.
Kids were being brutalized?
Okay, University of California police stood down just as the Capitol Hill police stood down on January 6th. And it was so obvious to me and that these Zionist hooligans were used as proxy muscle by the police to break up an encampment that university leadership was unable to dismantle on their own, because these were just peaceful students assembled on the lawn. It's been reported by the UCLA Daily Bruin, the school paper, that only 5 police officers were even stationed on campus. After they were attacked by the Zionists, they just left. They didn't call in reinforcements. LAPD didn't come in. And witnesses to the attack told me that for 4 hours, students were being brutally beaten with hammers and metal pipes and pepper spray by masked hooligans with no interference from the police at all. Private security, they refused to allow reporters from the school paper to flee into the building where they had their office, and they too were attacked by these Zionist hooligans. So once again, gigantic scandal. I mean, we saw at the State Department last week, the spokesman Vedant Patel, under orders from Tony Blinken, who's really running this operation in this government.
Well, Patel was absurd last week.
Yeah,
Absurd.
he refused to condemn Netanyahu and foreign leaders from Israel for attacking American students and demanding that American federal police wage a military-style crackdown on students. He refused to call that interference. And now we're seeing the White House press secretary refuse to condemn these orchestrated pro-Israel ethno-supremacist mob attacks on peaceful American students. So the Democratic Party establishment is just lost its mind.
Where's Gavin Newsom? Where's the governor of California? Where's Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles?
Great question. I mean, I'm going to be looking at their response, and I can assure you that it will be a kind of vague response just referring to violence without pinpointing the source of the violence. This was orchestrated violence. The Israel lobby was directing this violence. I lived in LA for 5 years. I saw how the Israeli expat community operates there. Anytime there was like a Jewish peace event that I would attend, I once went to a synagogue to see an Israeli army refuser speak in West LA, and the synagogue was besieged and assaulted by local West LA Israeli expats, all former military, who shut it down, racially menaced any person of color in that event, prevented the speaker from speaking in a synagogue. And then when security came, they put their children in front of them like human shields to prevent the security from reaching them. And that's what we're seeing. It really it's reminiscent of violence I've seen from the Venezuelan community here in Washington, who act as kind of a proxy of the State Department, the way that the Cuban mafia in Miami does. Whenever there's a protest against regime change on Venezuela, they come out and violently assault the protesters in a way that U.S. Secret Service police or D.C. police cannot do. And it's also what we saw in Canada, where Ukrainian Nazis were given extremely favorable immigration terms after World War II because the Canadian government wanted them to serve as strike breakers when there was a massive push for expansion of labor rights in Canada in the 1950s. One of those strike breakers, those former Nazis, was Yaroslav Hunka, who was honored last year in Canada's parliament by Justin Trudeau, Vladimir Zelensky, and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. So this is the same thing